Yo, what's up, man? The Jaguars re-sign or extend linebacker Foye Oluokun with $22 million in guaranteed money. What does it mean? Well, I'm going to tell you right now here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. And we thank you for making us your first listen, joining me on a Friday night. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Make sure you go over to the YouTube page and tap in to Locked On Jaguars. Hit the like button, subscribe button. Make sure you also hit the bell so you receive notifications, just like the people that have joined me. They receive notifications that an episode is up. And wherever you listen to your audio podcast, make sure you go over to that location also and check us out and make sure you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you for joining us and making yourself an everydayer. And I appreciate you. If you want to be an everydayer, just join us and you can be an everydayer too. All right, listen, got to get into it, man. The Jaguars signed Foye Oluokun to an extension with $22 million in guaranteed money. Good for him. Good for the Jaguars. Believe it or not, I just said it. Good for him. Good for the Jaguars. I want to make that perfectly clear. And I think I'll spend the next 28 to 30 minutes telling you why I want to make that perfectly clear. I'll tell you what it means. I'll tell you what it means for the roster, which is also good. And I'll tell you what it means for certain players, which could be good and it could not be good, right? And then we'll look at the road ahead and explain from a team building perspective also why I feel the way I do. And that being said, let's get right into it, man. All right, so when this happened today, I tweeted out something, and it started a storm. And contrary to what most people might believe about those kind of storms, people were saying block people, turn it off. I ain't doing all of that because I actually like chippy Jaguar fans. And the reason why I like chippy Jaguar fans is because that means they have passion. That means that they care. And it will also be a chance for us to elicit further conversation about what's going on with the team. It shows you care. It shows you pay attention. It shows you listen. And that's all good. Shout out to the people, too, that tell me they agree with me, but they usually never agree with me the day that they do. You can leave the part about never agreeing with me out. That's fine. We don't have to do that. That's like telling somebody who lost weight, you used to be real fat. But it's all good, and we got real thick skin over here. The one thing I don't really appreciate, and I'll say this right now, especially when it comes from other media members, is to say that the reason I give an opinion on something that Trent Baalke does is because I don't like it. First of all, it's not personal with Trent Baalke. I don't know Trent Baalke very well, other than speaking to him in passing and a couple of handshakes here or there. That's it. I was never more hard on anybody than I was Dave Caldwell, and Dave Caldwell ended up a friend of mine and is still a friend of mine, even though I don't talk to him very much, especially about football matters. But I will say this: stop being so sensitive. I don't like when folks get all sensitive and not want to listen to the nuance of what we're trying to say. So we have 30 minutes today. It's a little bit of a monologue. It's not a whole bunch of exchanging, but we're going to talk about it, right? We're going to talk about it. First of all, it's a good thing. I have been up for the Jaguars having retention for a long time. All I talk is about retaining good players. If you get a good player, keep him. Pay your guy, pay your guy, pay your guy. Right? Right. That is established. Everyone knows that I have done that. And the analogy that I use is building a house. You pour the slab, you start elevating it. You can't go back and pour the slab all over again. You got to keep elevating it, and eventually the house actually is erect and it stands tall, right? And so to not like this move would be counterintuitive to my entire process and my entire point that I make. Now, there's a flip side of this. We always talk about the allocation of resources. Okay? Make no mistake about it. Off-ball linebackers, in an era where they run nickel 75% of the time, at least according to the Jaguars coach, and I believe him, they aren't as prioritized. Why do you think off-ball linebackers haven't been prioritized in places like Philly by Howard Roseman? Why do you think off-ball linebackers have been let go and let them hit the streets? And those guys like the Patrick Queens of the world, why do you think the Bears did it to the linebacker that ended up in Baltimore last year, the kid from Georgia? Why do you think that happens? That's because teams have to be judicious where they use their resources, their money, as well as their draft choices, right? Right. We've established that too. The difference in this situation is the year that the Jaguars signed Foye Oluokun is the same year they traded up for Devin Lloyd and then used the third-round pick on Chad Muma. Now, at the time, I defended it. I defended it to people that know the game. I defended it to people that said it was a bad move. I said, look, here's what we might be seeing. After year 2 or year 3, they may have a decision that they have to make. I also said that the team was transitioning from a traditional 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense, and they didn't have those big bodies inside. Remember when they let Quincy Williams go, who's now an all-pro up with the Jets? I said they did it because they didn't fit. They needed different body types. So if you see one of those two start in Lloyd and Muma, and the other one end up being a replacement for Oluokun, that will explain it. That's not going to happen. You know why that ain't going to happen? Because Foye Oluokun just signed an extension with another $22 million in guarantees, which means at the least he's going to start for the next 2 years, barring injury. So that would mean that one of those players will never be a starter and will at some point get to their second, barring injury, and will get to their second contract without being a starter. So I'm sorry for them if their money isn't going to be what they thought it was. Like, they're not going to get a Foye Oluokun contract, the one that he got to leave Atlanta to come here, because there won't be the opportunity, barring injury, for them to show exactly what they are. No problem. Chad Muma has a contract that pays him $5 million over 4 years, which means that's a hell of a price tag for a guy that's linebacker 3 on this team. That's good for the Jaguars. But I don't know if that was their intention when they drafted him. I really, really don't. Because if you go back in time, at the time the Jaguars drafted Chad Muma, the Jacksonville Jaguars needed everything with the exception of a quarterback. They needed everything with the exception of a quarterback. When I suggested that they take Asante Samuel the same year that they take Tyson Campbell, somebody said, you can't do that. You just took him and you just signed Shaq Griffin. When you think about teams being in nickel 75% of the time, that means usually there's 3 corners on the field, right? 3. Uno, dos, tres. You can definitely take that. You can take a corner in the same round. You can take 2 second-round corners. You can take a first and a second-round corner. You can take a first and a third-round corner. You know how I know? Because the Chiefs did it when they took McDuffie. And if you look at Kansas City's roster, the reason why they can let L'Jarius Sneed go is because they took 3/4 or 3/5 of their, in 2022, they took 3/5 of their starting lineup from last year in that draft. Their nickel, McDuffie, Watkins, their replacement corner, and Williams, the other corner. Those are the guys they're going to line up with. And then they took Cook, a safety. That's 4 DBs in one draft because they know you play 5 at a time. They fixed their entire draft in 1 year. You add L'Jarius Sneed to it. Those are the 5 guys they rolled out there with last year. Now what's going to happen is Sneed left, and guess what? They just plug and play. That is what I wanted. I also wanted them to do the same thing with Walker Little. But as we've seen, what's happened is this. Walker Little has been drafted over, signed over, replaced, and now he's going into his 4th year where he's never been a starter. The Jaguars are likely not going to re-sign him to a long-term extension unless he agrees that he is simply a swing tackle. And he's going to hit the free agency market without ever showing what he could do, barring injury. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not the way the draft is designed. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you what it means in segment 2. But before that, I'm going to tell you something that we were arguing last week about change. And the change that I'm talking about are 6th and 7th round picks. Those are the things that make trades go. We were debating last week whether it was worth it. I actually had somebody tell me today that 3rd round picks aren't that important, that only 17% of them actually make it. You know, you got Calvin Ridley for a 3rd round pick, basically. Do you realize your rival Titans just got L'Jarius Sneed for a 3rd round pick next year and they had to pay him? I don't know if fans realize this, but they say things that they speak for GMs, and GMs don't feel that way. You cannot tell one general manager in the National Football League that a 3rd or 4th round pick doesn't have value. They'll look at you and tell you that you're flat out crazy. So when people say stuff like that, they're pretending. It's not real. It's their own reality. It's their own alternative intelligence or whatever. It's not real. Don't listen to anybody that says that. I'll tell you also what it means from a team building perspective. That is the most important thing. I'm going to do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. First, I got to let you know about FanDuel, the sponsor of today's show. Look, that tournament is still going on, man. Matter of fact, North Carolina hurt my heart and busted my heart last night. You don't have to suffer from that, though. All you got to do is just read up on it a little bit. And what you'll do, get the information from FanDuel before you lay your bets down, and you can say goodbye to those busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every single game in the tourney. Whether you're betting on an upset or 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. I'll spell it for you. LOCKEDON, and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. That's FanDuel/lockedon. All right, segment number 2 here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for joining us every single day, making us your first listen because it's your team every single day. What up, Duval TV and David Neal and Itzlin D? Okay, all right. And Itzlin D say, Antonio Johnson was a 5th round and fans got him on a high value on this team. Oh, what up? What up, Cuddy Green? What's going on with you? All right, so listen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you why it's so important. The reason why it's so important that this team starts hitting on day 2 and day 3 picks at a higher clip than they've been hitting on day 2 and day 3 picks is because they found their quarterback. And what do I mean by that? They have Trevor Lawrence, and whether you like Trevor Lawrence or you think he's overrated or you don't like him, that's not the point. The point is they are committed to him, and I like him too, right? So by them being committed to him, it is about to be his turn to reset the market and get paid, right? And Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion, deserves an extension. I don't care what Richard Sherman or anybody else says, he deserves an extension. And when you give Trevor Lawrence extension, it's going to pay him between $45 and $50 million per year. Now, when you make $45 or $50 million per year, that gives the team less flexibility to go out and buy free agents. When you add that to the fact that Josh Allen is sitting there and he may get $28 million a year, that makes it even more important for you to hit on draft picks. And the reason why I use the Chiefs is because they won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls, and they have been paying people like Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes, and they've had to let great football players go, which is easy to do when you win championships. It is not easy to do when you haven't won championships because you haven't gotten to the point where you should be letting good players leave your organization, right? So what that means is they are now entering the territory of their competitors, and they have failed to do something that is very critical that their competitors have done very well. And what that is find the Puka Nakuas of the world in the draft. They haven't done it. Chiefs have found Pacheco. Puka Nacua is running around catching balls in LA when they were all banged up. And guess what? They went back to the playoffs and he led the league in receiving. And his other rookie buddy, Kyron Williams, was 3rd in the league in rushing. So here's what has to happen. Now, the Jaguars' habit of sign, and And even though they're not breaking the bank with one individual player, they are in the top 5 or 6 of money spent in free agency over the last 4 or 5 years. So that means they're spreading the wealth around, right? They're not going after A guys. They're going after B and C guys that they hope can turn into A and B guys, right? That's what they've been doing. Here's the news flash. They can't keep doing that if and when Trevor's not on a rookie deal. They can't keep doing that if and when they paying Josh all of this money. It just doesn't work that way. So what they're going to have to start doing is doing the other part of this entire scenario that people are forgetting that they don't do very well. And what that is draft well. They've drafted well in round 1. They haven't drafted well beyond that since Urban Meyer left. And I say that I say that with all importance. And I know Urban ain't nobody's favorite person around here, but here is the real thing. That first year, they drafted a bunch of players that Urban Meyer was familiar with and his staff was familiar with from when they recruited him. Since then, not so much, right? Because he's not here. So therefore, I'm trying to give Trent Baalke the benefit of the doubt. I'm trying my best. So I try to rationalize what I consider them not really getting a draft choice or getting draft picks right in the second, third, and fourth round. And people tell me everybody misses on draft picks. You're right, they do. A lot of people miss on draft picks. And I've considered that when I talk about the Jaguars. But nobody misses on draft picks after day 1 like the Jacksonville Jaguars. Nobody. And for the person or the people, and mainly I'm talking about the person that says they won 9 games in 2 years, and before that, they barely won 3 or 4 games over a 2-year period. Why is everybody complaining? We're not complaining. See, the difference is between me and those people is they think criticism or pointing out facts is complaining because it doesn't feel good. But those are the same people that won't rationalize with you when it comes time to explain things that the team is doing and giving you ideas of what the team should be looking for and what they shouldn't be looking for. There's not one GM in the league, there's not one scout in the league that thinks you can win without hitting on picks that aren't day 2, 3, or 4. Oh, not even day 4, day 2 or 3. You got to nail it. You have to nail it. You have to get some of them right. There has to be an all-pro in there somewhere occasionally. There has to be a Pro Bowler in there somewhere occasionally. Because once you get to the point that is going to be new territory for Jacksonville, where they're paying $45 and $50 million for a franchise quarterback, it is going to be paramount that you hit on players. Why? And here's the key. Because that is what you need to surround Trevor Lawrence with everything he needs to be successful. That's it. If you don't hit on those guys, number 16 struggles. And when they got Trevor, I said one of the keys was to be able to insulate him with not only good coaching, but good players, good scouting, a sound system where you're not just drafting and developing, you're drafting, developing, and using those developmental players to replace guys that you cannot continue to pay, especially if you're hanging around the 9 or 10 win category. Because the 9 or 10 win category is justification for those guys to ask for money. If they won 4 or 5 or 6 games, you know what fans could say? Well, we can't win with them, so why are we paying them? Let them go and start with something else. But when you win 9 or 10 and you're hanging in there like that, well, that gives the players, and that's enough leverage because you aren't failing, so to speak. It's enough leverage for them to say, hey, man, we won 10 games. We went to the first. I was a part of a team that got us to the wild card. You're going to have to pay those guys. If you don't think what I'm saying makes sense, I wonder if you went to Chad Muma right now, who for the next 2 years will be a good linebacker 3 for the Jaguars. Barring injury, he's going to be able to put some stuff on tape. I recall when Trent was in San Francisco, he had Navarro Bowman and the new Hall of Famer Patrick Willis. You know his third linebacker was? Dan Scooter. And that's when people were playing 3 linebackers. That was when they were playing 3 linebackers, right? Dan Scooter. And Dan Scooter ended up getting a big contract here. And what did everyone say? Dan Scooter sucks. So he was gone after what, a year or 2 here? Yeah. So I bet you Chad Muma doesn't want that to be his fate. Chad Muma probably sat there and saw guys leave and guys get paid and said, you know what, that can be me. 2 or 3 years of hard work, they're going to put me in as a starter. Well, if they put him in as a starter, that means somebody got hurt. Or if they put him in as a starter, that means either the guy that you just paid or the guy who was drafted in front of him, Devin Lloyd, isn't playing very much. But at some point, we have to understand GMs are not paid to hedge their bets. They're paid to, at some point to something tangible and say that they got it right. They don't get to sit behind a microphone in a studio and just go, they did the best that they could. And we can rationalize all day about why they did what they did. This is what I'm talking about. And William Pope, you just asked me a question. If you want to know how I feel about the free agents, instead of listening to the conversation I'm having right now, I got archives, man. All you got to do is just peel back and you can hear what I'm talking about with free agents. I'm not talking about that right now, and I'm not a jukebox, and you can't make me change the subject. All right? Listen to what I'm trying to tell you, and it might help you out a little bit. So here's where I'm going. What does it mean for the road ahead? Well, now I'm concerned because they have yet to prove that they can do better than picking 1 or 1.5 guys every year, 3 guys every 2 years that's going to pan out in the draft. I wanted evidence of it. I wanted to see Walker Little take one of those jobs and not have to play his entire contract as a backup. Kudos to the Jaguars if they don't think these guys are good enough, so they go out and get somebody else. That's fine. But what that points out to me is that you failed to get guys that are good enough and develop them, which is a problem, which is okay to bring up. I'm going to finish this and tell you what the road ahead holds for Jacksonville and why it ain't really all bad, man. It's not. Just because you point out facts that make people feel uncomfortable does not mean the whole world is about to end. And I'll tell you why in just a second here on Locked On Jaguar. All right, man, we're rolling along here, Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I appreciate everybody tuning in here on a live on a Friday night, but I had to get this out. Sometimes I didn't mean to record this late, but sometimes the way that this works and life starts lifing, it lines up perfectly because this subject came up and I didn't want to have to wait until Monday to let you guys know how I felt about it. What does it mean moving ahead? It means that the Jaguars are solid at 1, 2, and 3 at linebacker. And maybe that was the goal of Trent Baalke. Newsflash for you. Before he was under contract, they didn't have to extend him right now. I think they did this to move around and save cap money. And I'll have to see the way the terms are. But maybe what they did was they lowered his cap this year to do some other things, like maybe get that extension done with Josh Allen. So they're going to field a good team, and they're going to be very, very comfortable with their depth. And that's what they're supposed to do. And I know the coaches are probably super, super happy about this. And Chad Moon was probably going to come in and bow up and stick his chest out and go out there and compete. Iron sharpens iron. All of that is good, and nobody's saying it isn't. All right? I want everybody to repeat that. I like the fact that they got those guys at 1, 2, and 3 at linebacker. I'm good with that. I'm perfect with it. I'm looking for another arm of this thing to turn around in a positive direction. We can talk about this draft that's coming up and whether or not they're going to get the right people and whether they won't get the right people. But we don't know if those guys are the right or wrong people until they actually get on the field, right? And I want more competition. I want everybody to feel like ain't nothing sweet. I ain't got no problem with Luke Fortner not being a starting center this year and sitting back there and learning and seeing if he can get stronger. I ain't got no problem with Chad Muma continuing to be a backup. What I have a problem with are people that don't understand that when that pick happened in conjunction with the other 2 acquisitions, that same cycle, there were questions as to why you would invest all of those resources in 3 off-ball linebackers in 1 season. And then to double it up the next year in the 4th round, they went and did the same thing and got Ventrell Miller, right? Have they been good enough to do that? But they wake up this offseason after not making the playoffs, and they sat there and told you that they weren't big and physical enough. So you're not big and physical enough, but you didn't keep just trying and just throwing darts at big people. All you did was keep drafting off-ball linebackers. You know the resource that they've used more than anybody over the last 5 years on defensive backs. Guess what they did this year? They signed 2, and people are saying they should get another one. At some point, we have to understand all I want is for y'all to be happy. That's it. All I do is just challenge the people that are supposed to reward you for your money, your time, your emotions, all of the stuff that you do when you put your armor on and you go at people like me and other folks. All I want is for you to be happy. I don't want to be right. Sometimes I want to be wrong, especially when I'm critical. I don't want to be right. I want y'all to be happy. Don't hurt your help. Don't argue with me all day. Don't hurt your help. Baby, I'm here to help you. I'm trying to get you over the hump. Don't you see it? If you don't see it, I understand, because here's what happens. And people told me to start blocking people. I'm not going to do that unless somebody impugns my character. But what I won't do is block somebody because they're passionate about their team. After I'm long gone and my microphone is unplugged, and after half of these coaches and players are old and out of the league and doing something else with their life, Jaguar fans are going to still be here rooting for the team in teal and black, and you should be. It's just that sometimes your opinions are attached to your emotions, which are attached to your optimism and your hope for what is about to happen. So is mine. But with this caveat, I have the job to be objective. I have the job to tell you exactly what's going on. And I also have the job to explain to you the history of why everything got to this point. And I have this opinion. I am not Trent Baalke, who will sit here and tell you there's no reason for me to look in the past and think about what happened. On what job that is performance-based has anyone never looked at your history to determine where you are right now? I just want to know. I tell you what, do this for me. The misery that you feel when this team isn't good, why you feel that way? Why do you have sometimes what I think is Stockholm syndrome? Why are you so quick to say we won 9 games 2 years in a row? That's way better than the way we used to. So wait a minute. You tell me you can use history as a reason to make yourself feel better about mediocrity, but I can't use history to make my point about Trent Baalke, who, in my opinion, has been less than mediocre. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Everybody has a history. When you fill out an application for a job and they ask you for a resume, what the hell you think your resume represents? Who you are and what have you done and what are your qualifications to continue to do this, especially in something like this? What are your qualifications for me to continue to believe that as things get tighter because Trevor is going to have a deal that is $45 to $50 million, why should I invest my time in thinking that you can fix the team when you haven't shown me you can do it before? Don't worry, I'll wait. That's what I'm trying to tell everybody. Folks are getting mad at the messenger, but I'm just trying to give you the message and spit facts about team building that no other team in the league decides to use those resources in a short period of time on off-ball linebackers when you're in a nickel 75% of the time. Fact. No other team in the league, not one, has done that. But you want me to believe that because Trent Baalke did it, it's all good. And by the way, when he did it, I was standing on the field and I told my buddy Pete Prisco for CBS, well, I'm going to give him a chance, man. I'm going to give him a chance. And if Mooma's on the field at some point, and he still might get on the field, but what you don't understand is after this year, for his extension kicks in, and when the extension kicks in, because of the guaranteed money, they're planning on him playing at least for 2 more years as the starter, maybe even 3. That would mean that would be just like Walker Little, where Mooma hits the door and he never sees the field. If the Jaguars know he's not good enough, fine, I have no problem with it. But if the Jaguars know he's not good enough, then I get to ask who picked him. And if the man who picked him and he's never been good enough and he won't be good enough, him and Walker Little, when they leave here, I'll ask, why should I believe you are going to be picking people in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round that are ever going to work when I've never seen you do it before? That ain't that hard to do, and it ain't hard to believe that that's what I did. The only thing hard to believe, there are people that actually do this job that I'm doing for a living, and they can't see it. All right, I'll tell you what you can see. You can check out Locked On NFL, as well as make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today. All right, because if you're watching Fox Sports and ESPN all day and you got to turn the volume down because those people are shouting, even when you mute it, that you can still hear them on TV yelling at each other. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that yelling and screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. I am done. That is it. I got my Jaguar glass right here with my little beverage in it, and I ain't going to tell you what it is because they got to throw some money my way for a sponsor, but whatever it is, it's going to feel good going down. You guys be safe. Enjoy your weekend. If anything else happens, we'll bring it out to you. And thank you again for joining Locked On Jaguars, making it your team every day. And we thank you always for making us your first listen.